This is Gemara and Yoma Daf Ayin. Tonight's shir is sponsored as a special schos shidduch for Sarah Miriam, Shira Miriam Basri Zol Gittel. The learning of the entire Chabura should be a tremendous schos. Shidduch shishvain the zivik hagayin b'karoiv. Of course, all our chidim men v'vegel chaim and sarsh samsim reizes her bas knendol ita basim bas chaysay yisol b'mintel lez reference to shavlei shom bas navi v'shavik v'shirchan v'rol v'ntia din l'chan reizim v'chvas milk chaya bas mina li v'racha bas v'amusa din eina bas shin minda sviv v'heki v'reu den v'chel yisver nas leili huva v'fkabatz v'shavin v'vel yisvim v'chel ester b'soy shar chali Yisrael as well as chashidach b'adaleya bas ita and Yisrael chayim ben de v'ira. We pick it up on the bottom of Samuch Tesam and Beis. We just finished the Sierra Mishtaleach. The Kohen Gadol was just notified, whether it's through the flags waving, whether it's through the calculation of the distance, but he knows that the Sierra has been thrown off the mountain, that the person has reached his destination. Now the Kohen Gadol begins the Kriyas HaTorah, which we started talking about yesterday. Says the Gemara, what was the Torah that he read? V'kayra achreimois v'ach v'asar. Samach Tesam and Beis, 6 lines on the bottom, 2 different parashiyos that he reads, and if there's 2 different parashiyos, they do not go one after another. There's achreimois and ach v'asar, which is obviously a skip in between those 2 parashiyos. And based off of that, says the Gemara of Remeni, I ask a stira contradiction, midalgin benavi, v'midalgin b'tayra. Ask the Gemara, I don't understand. You're not allowed to skip by Torah. So how do we see over here that they're skipping a navi? Excuse me. So how do we find the Kohen Gadol skips when he laid? Answers the Gemara like Kasha kan bechdei sheyafsek aturgaman kan bechdei sheyafsek aturgaman. Of course, we know that back Bisman Chazal they used to have a maturgaman. There would be someone that each pasuk that was read would call out the translation, the Aramaic, the explanation of the psukim. So says the Gemara, when are you not allowed to split? If it's a skip, excuse me, you're not allowed to skip if you're skipping long enough that people are going to notice there's a skip. But if your skip is so quick that the amount of time the Maturgaman, the translator, says the translation, and by that time you already quickly roll the Torah, you ready up to the next parsha, that's going to be allowed. Ask the Gemara, really, is that true? But we learned upon that, medalgin b'navi v'medalgin b'Torah. It says in our brisa, you're allowed to skip by navi, and not in Torah. And the brisa continues and explains, vadkama medalik, how long you're allowed to skip, and the brisa explains, b'chdei shlo yafsik aturgaman, that when are you allowed to skip, excuse me, I keep saying split. Excuse me. When are you allowed to skip by Navi if it's the amount of time that the Maturgaman it's not going to be noticeable? But what do we see clearly? We see that only in Navi are you allowed to skip that amount of time. But clearly, ask the Gemara 3 lines at the bottom. When it comes to skipping in Torah, you're not allowed to skip at all. So how do we just answer that you're allowed to skip in Torah a little bit? We see clearly not. Amar Abaye answers the Gemara like Kasha kan bin yanechad kan b'shnei inanim. When it comes to 1 inyan, that is when you're allowed to skip. When it comes to 2 inyanim, 2 topics, then you are not allowed to skip. Explains the Gemara. V'atanya, and this is a raya, as Rashi, the last Rashi points out, V'atanya usually means it's a question. V'atanya, here Rashi says, Bini chusa, this is a raya, this is a proof. V'atanya, and it says the Gemara, we have a proof to that which we just said from our brisa. Medalgin b'Torah, Bini nechad, you're allowed to skip in Torah if it's 1 topic. Uba navi, b'shnei yanim. When it comes to navi, you can skip in 2 topics. Kan v'kan, b'chdei shel yafsek aturgaman, the amount of time that it is not noticeable. And you're not allowed to skip. Now that's really the end of our raya. Now this brisa just continues that you're not allowed to skip from 1 navi to the next. Uben navi shal shnei masar midalgin. But within the navi of shnei trei asar, you're allowed to skip. We move along to Daf Ayin Amud Aleph. Ubelvad shal yedaling misayf hasefer letchilasai. As long as you do not skip long enough, the amount of time that it would take to read from the end of the entire Sefer until the beginning. And that is the reading of the Kohen Gadol, and that is the reason why by us he's allowed to skip, he's allowed to go and skip from Ach by Asar, skip to the second Parsha, basically because we're within 1 parsha. Explains the Gemara of the Goylel Sefer Torah, and then we said that they roll up the Sefer Torah, and the Kohen Gadol announces, more than I read is in this Sefer Torah. Now we're going to see some basic dinim, sometimes confusing dinim, but some basic dinim of when we're allowed to skip in the Torah, when we're allowed to take in a new Sefer Torah, etc. Says the Gemara, 2 lines on the top, Ayinam and Beis, the Kol Kach Lama. Why did the Kohen Gadol have to announce that there's more here than I read? Explains the Gemara, a very important rule. Kedei We don't want to be mighty laz on a Sefer Torah. We don't want people to think the Sefer Torah is not kosher. And let's look at Rashi, 3 lines from the top. Rashi explains, because when they see him laning the third parsha Baal Peh, what are the people going to think? Why is he reading it Baal Peh? Must be because the Sefer Torah is missing that parsha. So therefore he announces, no, it really does exist over here. And this is the basic premise, as we're going to see right now, that any time that we're going to put away a Sefer Torah, we always have to be concerned, wait, what are people going to think? Are people going to think that the Sefer Torah is not kosher? Says the Gemara, and then on the 10th day, that parsha, he reads Baal Peh, he reads by heart. Says the Gemara, Amai, why does he read it by heart? Roll the Sefer Torah and read it from there. Explains the Gemara another very important rule. We do not whine Sefer Torah by tzibur. Why? Because the covet of the tzibur, it's disrespectful, as Rashi here points out, that everyone's waiting and you're busy rolling the Sefer Torah. We do not want that situation, so he reads it by heart. Says the Gemara, great, so take out a new Sefer Torah. If you're afraid it's going to take too long, so let's take out another Sefer Torah. Ravuna bar Yehuda Amar Misham B'Kamai Shel Rishain. Like we just explained, they were afraid if we put away one Torah, put out the next, they're going to think the first one is not kosher. Another reason, every new Sefer Torah you're going to have to make a new bracha Torah, and therefore it's a bracha shenetzricha, not a bracha levatala, because the bracha is emes. But a bracha shenetzricha is anytime you make a bracha which is true, it's just unnecessary. Ask the Gemara, are we really concerned that people are going to think the Torah is not kosher, a pagam, a disrespect to the Sefer Torah of Amar Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, Rosh Chodesh Tevish Chaliyas b'Shabbos? Of course, we know this is Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah when it falls on Shabbos. Mavian Shalosh Shairais. Bring out 3 Sefer Torah, V'kari Nachas Binyan Shal Yom Chanukah, V'acha Shal Rosh Chodesh, V'acha Shal Chanukah. I'm sorry, Binyan Shal Yom is the Parshas Shavua. That's the Torah. Chanukah and Rosh Chodesh. So ask the Gemara, we do see 3 parashiyos, 3 Sefer Torah. Answers the Gemara, very important. Tlasa Gavri, but Tlasa Sefri, Lakapagama. 3 different Torahs, 3 different people is no problem. Chad Gavra, but 3 Sefri, Kapagama. When it's one person, the Kohen Gadol, reading from 2 different Sefer Torah, then there is this chashash that people are going to discredit and find the first Sefer Torah not to be kosher. And we continue that. What did the Kohen Gadol do? He made 8 brachas. Tanur Rabbanan explains the Gemara 5 lines from the white lines. Ala Torah, what does he mean by Ala Torah? Like the bracha we make every time on the Torah in the shul Asher Bar Charbanu. Ala Avaydav, Alaydav, Amachilas Avain, Kitikana, like we have in our Shemon Esrei. And then what did the Mishnah teach us? That he says the bracha for the, I'm sorry, not Mekadesh, Al HaMikdash Bifnei Atzmai, excuse me, for the Beis HaMikdash, Val Kohanim Bifnei Atzman, Val Yisrael Bifnei Atzman, Val Shar Tefillah, and then for the rest of the Tefillahs. And those are the 8 brachas that the Kohen Gadol says. Says the Gemara, Tanur Rabbanan, and the Gemara now explains what this last bracha is, V'shar Tefillah. What does it mean when the Mishnah says that the rest of the davening, this refers to Rina, Tchina, Bakasha, Milfanecha, Lamcha, Beis Yisrael. Rina is a Tefillah, a prayer. Bakasha, Tchina is when we're asking for something. Bakasha, different type of request. Milfanecha, in front of you, Alamcha Yisrael, for your nation, Klal Yisrael. Shetzrichen Lahaisha, that they need your salvation, they need you to Hashem to save them. This is a form of Shemei Tefillah, like the bracha we have. And afterwards, so that's the end of the Tefillah. The Kohen Gadol says 8 brachas. And then what happens? Each and every person brings maybe Sefer Torah, maybe brings their own Sefer Torah from their house. And they read from it to show its beauty to the public. So first of all, let's point out everyone had a Sefer Torah because who knows, Sfarim, no printed books. And therefore, the only way to learn was through a Sefer Torah, through a scroll. And therefore, everyone had their own. And here we see the rule of Hidur Mitzvah. We see over here that everyone brought out the Sefer Torah for what reason? That everyone can see the beauty. There's a special concept of beautifying the mitzvahs. Hasna lefana b'mitzvahs. Make a mitzvah beautiful. We know this by Lulav, by Atzraik. We see it here by Sefer Torah. They would read so that everyone could see their beautiful Sefer Torah. Says the Gemara, Aroi Kohen Gadol, the Mishnah concluded that said, Loy b'mnei she'eino rashai. If you saw the Kohen Gadol, you didn't see them burning the carbonis. And the reason basically is because they're a distance apart. Explains the Gemara Pshita. What was the Havamina? You thought there's an issue watching both that we had to explain because they just are not near each other. Explains the Gemara, the time I would have thought the Reish Lakish, I'm Reish Lakish. Ein ma'avirin ala mitzvahs. Says Reish Lakish, you would think that there is an issue watching both of them. You know why? Because if you leave one to go to the other one at some level, you're being ma'avir, you're leaving the mitzvah. What mitzvah? Well, my mitzvah, there's a mitzvah to be there when the mitzvah is happening. There's a mitzvah to be present when a mitzvah is happening, when the Kohen Gadol is burning it, when the Kohen Gadol is doing the Avaida. So you would think that itself is a problem, Kamash Malan, that it wouldn't be allowed to do it. And what's the reason? Rashi over here explains right before the Mishnah. The Havamina was a fascinating Havamina. There's a Havamina, there's a thought that there's a concept of Mavirin ala mitzvahs when it comes to just witnessing a mitzvah. The Gemara answers no, there's no concept. Of course, there is a very special and important rule of Raiva Mahadras Melech, but it would not trump when it comes to Mavirin ala mitzvahs, and you would be allowed to leave to witness another mitzvah. Says the Gemara 6 lines into the medium-sized line, Ayin Amar Aleph, as we continue the Avaida of the Kohen Gadol. Until now, we basically discussed the par and the seir. The par and the seir we dealt with extensively inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, on the paroiches, and then we said how they were mixed and poured on Mizbeach. And now we continue, and then we went into the seir HaMishaleach, thrown off the mountain. Now in our Mishnah, we continue the rest of the Avaida, which we already mentioned in passing in earlier Prakim and Dafim. Now we're going to go and deal with extensively the rest of the Avodah. Says the Mishnah, Ima big day bots. As we mentioned, the Kohen Gadol, when he read the Torah, he's allowed to either be wearing the linen vestments, the big day lavan, or he's allowed to be wearing his own clothing. So says the Mishnah, if he's wearing the big day bots, if he wore it while he read the Torah, Kiddush Yodav Raglav, what does he do? He now washes his hands and his feet before taking them off. Meaning, if he already took them off before, he would wash his feet then. If not, he does it now. Pashat, he goes down, he goes into the mikvah, he dries himself off, which the Mefarshim deal with. Why is he drying himself off? Meaning he's drying himself off because he's wet. But it sounds like there's a special emphasis that he can't be wet. Let's leave that for now. Vivila big days of, they bring in the golden clothing. Meaning this is really the first time that he's putting back on the golden clothing. Meaning he started off the Avaidu with the big day Zav, the carbon tam in the morning. Then we've been dealing till now with the big day Lavan inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now he puts back on the big day Zav. V'lavash v'kidesh adav raglav yatzav asas Eloi v's'ela he does his aisle and the nation's aisle. V'shivas kvasim tamimim, and then the 7 Tavasim, which that is the Karban Musaf, as we're going to deal with extensively in the Gemara, the 7 male sheep. B'nei Shana that were 1 year old, Divi Rav Eliezer. Rav Akiva Oimer, Im Tamid Shel Shachar, Hayikrivim. No, they would bring those Shiva Kvasim, as the Gemara is going to explain, with the Tamid Shel Shachar, Upar Oila V'Seir Anase B'Achotz, Hayikrivim in Tam Shel Ben Arbaim. And those one with the afternoon. And that's really the Gemara is going to deal with extensively the exact breakup where each carbon was brought. Kiddush Yadav Raglav, again he washes his hands in feet. Pasha Yard V'Tavel goes to mikvah again. Olav Nisam Gevila Big Dilavan, but back on the Big Dilavan for the second time of Yom Kippur. V'Lavash Kiddush Yadav Raglav. Nechnas, and then what is he going back at the Kodesh HaKadosh for? He left something in there. Loitzi as a kaf. Let's take out the shovel with the burning coals. V'Samachta. Then Kiddush Yadav Raglav again. Upasha Yard V'Tavel. Olav Nistabik. He drives himself off. He really big days off. Lavash Kiddush Yadav Raglav. He washes his hands again. Now he finishes off the day by bringing the Ketairis up in Arbayim. He gets undressed. Yard v'tavel olav v'nistabik. He feel a big day atzmai. Then he puts back on his regular clothing. V'lavash umelavin Isai. After the entire holy day, they escort him home. Ad Beisai v'yayim day v'haya. It was a wonderful yontif for himself. For all his friends. B'shah sheyotze b'shalom and hakadosh. Then he went out b'shalom. He went out with peace. He survived the wonderful Avaida. He would come home and they would make a great festive meal, a great party. And this is really the end of something that we've learned many times, the Chamish Tfilos, the 5 times he went to the mikvah, the asara kiddusha raglayim, yodav v'raglayim, the 10 times that he washed his hands and his legs. And let's just get a generic, basic framework, as the Gemara is going to explain it more. But we know this 5 times he went to the mikvah, basically of gold, linen, linen. Basically, you have 3 golds, 2 linens, gold, linen, gold, linen, gold. Till now, until this Mishnah, we've dealt with gold, linen, gold, white. We could call it the big day love and the flying of the thim, the Kodesh Kodashim. And now this Mishnah goes back to stage number 3, which is back to Big Day Zav for his karbanis, then back to Big Day Love and to pick up the shovel, back to Big Day Zav to conclude the day. And that middle stage, that Big Day Zav middle stage, is going to be a big point of discussion, which karbanis precisely he's bringing now. Now let's go to it. Says the Gemara. What does the Mishnah mean? That's one option. Says the Gemara, where was the par ha'oila brought? Does the par ha'oila go with Tamid Shel Shachar, or does the par ha'oila go Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim? Does par ha'oila go with the first time you wore the golden clothing, or does it go over here on time number 2, stage number 3 of the Avodah? Visu, and furthermore, ask the Gemara, par ha'oila the Rabbi Eliezer the Shayara emas avilei. And furthermore, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that we have left over this, that we didn't list it at all, not left over. When in the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer did not mention at all the par ha'oila. So what does he hold about it? Vesu, in question number 3, being the Rabbi Eliezer, being the Rabbi Kiva, imuri chatas emas avilui. They didn't mention the imurim of the chatos, of the par and the seir, like we dealt with till now. Till this point, we dealt with the par and the seir of inside the Kodesh HaKodashim. Where do those imurim, when do they get brought? 3 different questions, which basically is going to hone in precisely what is the avodah, where do we fill in the details of the rest of the day. So Amar Rava, 2 lines from the wide lines, Amar Rava, Loi mishkachas lo mitkanta, ella oiler Rav Eliezer the Tanat ve'Shmuel, or the Rav Akiva Kitta Sefta. Says Rava, I only found a precise and precision reading of the exact avodah, either Rav Eliezer in a Mishnah of Rav Shmuel, or Rav Akiva in a Tosefta. And now we explained the Tanit ve'Shmuel, Shmuel learned in a Mishnah. Rav Eliezer Aimer in the first wide line, Yatzav asa Eloi ve'Elam. He does his ayil and the people's ayil. Ve'imure chatos. Again, those are already 2 details that we were looking for. Avol par ha'oila v'shiva kvasim v'sir anasa b'achot in damid shalbin arbayim. So again, we just filled in a lot of details. That with the tamid Shel Shachar, he brings his par, the par of the people. But when there's a carbon musaf, which is the Shiva Kvasim, the Sir Nasabah Chutzko, that goes with Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. And the basic detail, to make a complicated story a bit simpler, is where is the carbon musaf? Is the carbon musaf with Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim in the afternoon, or Bein Arbayim in the afternoon, or Tamid Shel Shachar in the morning? That was the way that Rav Eliezer in the Mishnah of Rav Shmuel explained that the musaf goes with the afternoon, and Rav Akiva did Tosefta, Ma'i did Rav Akiva Aimer. That's the machlokes. They say the musaf goes with the morning. Now Rav Akiva starts off the day with a makar, and as always, we're going to have now the ping pong match between Rav Akiva and between Rav Eliezer, how each one learns each other's psukim. So Rav Akiva, who learns that the musaf, again, the musaf of the Shiva Kvasim, and the Seir Bachot goes with Tamid Shel Shachar in the morning. Says Rav Akiva, you know why? Because it says by the Musaf of all Yom Tovim, Milvad Oilas HaBoiker Asher Oilas HaTamid, which aside for the Oilas HaBoiker and the Oilas HaTamid, referring to the Tamid Shel Shachar, V'achar Kach Avodas Hayom, then comes Avodas Hayom, V'achar Kach, we turn over to Ayin HaMebeis, Sir Anasa Bachotz, Shenemar, Sir Izim Echalachatas, Mevad, Sir Izim Echalachatas, Mavad Chatas Akipurim, Vachagach Eloi Vailoyom, then come his carbon and the people's aisle, Vachagach Emuri Chatas, Vachach Tomish Albein Rabbaim. So it says Rav Akiva, as the Gemara is really going to elaborate on this more, so we're going to keep on reading, it's going to get clearer and clearer. Says Rav Akiva, the Musaf goes with Tamid Shel Shachar, Milvad, Les Boiker, aside for the regular karbanos, goes the carbon Musaf. Says the Gemara really in the middle of Rav Bryce, Rav Akiva is really in the middle of talking with Tosefta, but now the Gemara interjects and says, my time with Rav Eliezer. What did he hold? Again, Rav Eliezer held the Musaf goes with Tamar Shalbein Arbayim. So what does he do with these psukim? Says the Gemara, Ovid Kidechsiv. He says the Kohen Gadol goes the way that it's written in the Torah. Ovid Bereisha, the Torah has Kohanim. First goes that which it says in Vayikra, Torah is Kohanim. V'adir Ovid the Chumash HaPikudim. And then goes that which it says in Bamidbar, basically go in the order of the Torah. For Rav Akiva, what does he say? Rav Akiva Kediktani Taima. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Rav Akiva taught us the reason on Amid Aleph. It says by the carbon musaf, Milvada is Aboikir Shaloilas Hatamid. It says by the carbon musaf aside for the oilas Aboikir, the carbon oil in the morning, and the carbon tamid, you should bring the musaf. Clearly showing me, says Rav Akiva, that the musaf goes with the oilas Hatamid, goes with the tamid shall Boiker. Alma Musafim. Says Rav Akiva, I agree with you. It'd be very nice to read the Torah straight. But should I tell you, the Torah taught us, aside for the Tamid Shel Shachar, what do you bring? The carbon musaf. So very clearly we see it together with the morning carbon goes the carbon musaf. Says Rav Akiva, beautiful makar. Says the Gemara, okay, so what does Rav Eliezer say? Rav Eliezer, says Rav Eliezer, I need for a totally random din. A din in the Gemara in Shavuos Daf Beis, and we buy alma. Says Rav Eliezer, it teaches me a totally different din. It teaches me that which one gives you the kapara, the other one gives you the kapara, referring to the chatos, the seir, that's the five lafim, is similar to the chatos, that's bachutz, a different din. Says Rav Eliezer, therefore, once I use that pasuk for a different din, now I can read the Torah straight. And therefore, where is the carbon musaf going to go with the Tam Mishel Bein Har Bayim? Now we go back to the Tosefta that we were quoting up top over here. Says Rav Yehuda Omer Mishmai Echad Karavim Tam Mishel Shachar Vishishem Tam Mishel Bein Har Bayim. Says Rav Yehuda, a little bit of a middle ground. One animal, again we have 7 serum, 7 sheep. One goes with Tam Mishel Shachar and 6 go Tam Mishel Bein Har Bayim. He splits them in half. Not half, but he splits them up. Rav Shimon Omer Mishmai Shisha Karavim in Tam Mishel Shachar Vechad in Tam Mishel Bein Har Bayim. So after we have the basic machlokes in Rav Akiva and Rav Eliezer, whether the musaf goes Tam Mishel Shachar, Tam Mishel Bein Har Bayim, the end of this Tosefta has 2, we'll call the middle ground shitais. We have Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon that are splitting them up. Rav Yehuda is saying 1 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon. Rav Shimon is saying 6 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. Says the Gemara in this last detail, my time, again, let's not get confused when it says Rabbanan, it means those Rabbanan we just quoted, meaning Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, and Rav Yehuda. Where do they get the point that we split up the 7 seirim, that we split up the 7 sheeps of the carbon musaf, 1 in the morning, or 6 in the morning, or 6 in the afternoon, or 1 in the afternoon? Explains the Gemara, Trey Krai Ksivi. There are 2 different psukim. Ksiv milvada lezabayk. That's one pasuk. Uksiv yatavasa salasai. Helkach avid minayu hacha. To do part now, part later, part Tam Mishel Shachar, part Tam Mishel Bein Har Bayim. Says the Gemara, great, but Maika Mifki. So what is exactly their machlekes in Rav Yehuda and Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, how to split it up? Rav Yehuda savar Rav Echad Kidich Seim Milvada Zabayker. It says aside for the Eilas Zabayker, aside for the carbon Tamid Shel Shachar. Of course, it's Rav Akiva's pasuk. Says Rav Yehuda, you have to do the musaf. So what do you do? Do something. Do one. Then do the rest of the avodah, the entire avodah of the Kohen Gadol of Yom Kippur, like we've been dealing with for the last 69 blat. Till Machulsha, because the Kohen Gadol might get weak. We don't want to work him too hard. There's a whole avodah to come. And then Till Machulsha Chalish Kohen Gadol, and then you'll finish off the musaf, the 6 at the end of the day. That's Rav Yehuda. Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon Savar, no. Kivan de Israel Avid Shisha. Once you start the musaf, do all 6 in the morning. And now you just do 1 in the afternoon. Why? Because Dilma Basha, because maybe you'll get negligent if you leave 6 over for the end of the day. Imagine, says Rav Shimon, if you only do 1 in the morning, then you do the entire avodah. At the end of the day, he's tired, he's weak. Now you tell him 6 more karbanos, he might get weak. So says Rav Shimon, do 6 in the morning. What are you, Rav Yehuda, concerned when it comes to doing the avodah of the Kohen Gadol, Yom Kippur, Lefnai, Lefneim, ashes, kedairas, everything? Then he might be weak. Says Rav Shimon, he's zaris. This is the day. It's game time. We're not worried about that. Says the Gemara, Givaldika Machlekes Rav Yehuda, Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, how we split it up due to the 2 psukim. Now says the Gemara, the Kulei Alma Mios, everyone holds Chad Ayol Hu. Everyone else, Rav Eliezer, Rav Akiva. Again, they argued when it came to the Karban Musaf. Says Rav Akiva goes with the morning. Says Rav Eliezer goes with the afternoon. But they all agree that when it comes to the ayil, there's only one ayil. How do we know that? Because no one mentioned the second ayil. Says the Gemara, Kiman. Who are they holding like? Kirabi. The Tanya learned in a rice of Rabbi Yomer ayil echad amar kan, hu amar chumish bekudim. That's the discussion. There are two psukim that mention the Karban ayil, a ram on Yom Kippur. So the question is, two different psukim, is that two different karbanis? Says Rabbi, no, it's the same carbon. Rav Eliezer, Rav Shimon, Aimer Shnei Limhein, Echad Amar Kan, Vechad Amar Chush Bekudim. There's two different rams. So says the Gemara, our Machlekes, Rav Eliezer and Rav Akiva, they obviously both hold there's only one ram, because only mentioned one ram, going with the opinion of Rabbi. My time of the Rabbi, it says Ayil Echad, one ram, very simple. Rav Eliezer, Rav Shimon, what does he say? Because he says the Torah mentioned it 2 times. Means it must be 2 different rams. It says Ayil Echad, my Echad, Miyuchad Shabbat, means the one, the special one. Rabbi, how does he know the special one? It says the choice ones, Nidarecha of your flock. Rav Shimon, says Rav Shimon, there's 2 Mekairis, that has to be a special one, Ayil Echad, as well as Mibchar, the special one by Karban Nadava, one by a Karban Chayva. Teach they both have to be the special one. Obviously, Sricha, meaning they each have a Maila, as the last Rashi Naaman explains, which we can explain very simply. You would think Karban Nadava, something is voluntary, so that should be the best. But a Chayva, as long as your obligation. Whereas the other way, you would think maybe a Karban Chayva, it's an obligation, that has to be the best. Maybe Nadava not. That's when you need 2 different psukim. That is the Machlekes Rav Eliezer and Rav Akiva, when the Musaf was brought, with the Karban Tamid Shal Shachar, says Rav Akiva, with Tamish Ben Arbaim, says Rav Eliezer, we are the middle ground, Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon, who said you split them up, either 1 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon, 6 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and now we finally concluded with how many Eilim, how many rams were there, both according to Rav and Rav Akiva. There was 1 ram with the opinion of Rabbi, not like Rav Shimon, while there were 2 rams in Yom Kippur. We'll pick up from here tomorrow.